Hey guys, what's going on here? John from What's Spinning. Hope everybody's doing well out there today. Let's chat about the new Soilwork album. Now, for the sake of embarrassing myself, I'm not going to try and pronounce this thing. I'm going to put it in the description. You know the title of it if you're watching this by now. If you don't know, Soilwork, Swedish death metal, melodic death metal band. They've been around since the mid 90s. And in the early days, like with their Steel Bath Suicide album, at the time I kind of felt like they were a breath of fresh air for the metal genre. But as things went on, to me, things just got really bad really quick. Now you gotta realize this is the late 90s and early 2000s for metal. It's not a very pretty and well-remembered time. There's a lot of very cheesy rap metal going on at the time, and new metal, which, if it wasn't done correctly, was just a disaster. As things went on for Soilwork, I felt like they were still writing some catchy riffs, and were like working with breakneck speeds and very intense, but some of the vocals of frontman Bjorn Strid just really didn't do much for me from time to time. They came off a little goofy. But one thing that was always kind of interesting was I saw a lot of elements of the early days of metalcore in their music. Time and time again with albums from Soilwork, I felt like there were a lot of elements to it that I really enjoyed, but like I couldn't just get the whole picture. I couldn't really encapsulate myself in Soilwork's music. There were elements that I always enjoyed, though. There were a lot of chugging guitars that I couldn't take seriously, and cliched lyrics, and hour-and-a-half albums that went absolutely nowhere and weren't nearly as adventurous as Soilwork thought. However, for my liking, ironically, I feel like the safer Soilwork get and the more generic that they get from time to time, I tend to enjoy their stuff more, which is really strange. And the new singles leading up to this album, like they're average at best. Like it's exactly where I kind of thought they would be around now. So without further ado, let's chat about this new album. This album starts off with Verkligheten, and to be honest, call me crazy, I actually really think this is a cool little instrumental intro for the band. Soilwork don't rush into anything, and as a result, they don't really get cheesy. They actually build up some genuine tension and emotion in these bars. Like I said, there's nothing like fancy about this, but it's dreary and somber and kind of what I dig when I'm listening to metal. And honestly, Arrival is up next, and I don't think this is a bad track either. As a matter of fact, for a single, I think it's the strongest one here. It ends up having this epicness to it, almost like a black metal track, which is not where I thought we'd be right now. And these verses, like when they get rolling, they're pretty brutal. I just really sort of wish that I can get into some of Bjorn's more sung vocals, because some of them, especially at the chorus, they do get a little corny. But thankfully, like a lot of the music that Soilwork's put out over the years, there are enough ripping chords and breakneck drums here for a pretty decent metal tune. Later tracks like Full Moon Shoals really use the same formula. They start off very slow, they show Soilwork taking their time, and as a result, they bring up some genuine emotion. This is a very bulky and muscular tune and all, but it still has these, catchy riffs that really stick with you. Like this one is completely over the top, but it's almost in like a doom metal style, and that's totally what I'm going for these days. That's totally what I'm into. But like every time I find something I really love about this album, we have these verses on Full Moon Shoals where I can't take them seriously at all. Like some of these lyrics are so cliche. Thankfully, the chorus here is epic and gigantic, but still, it's a little bit of a letdown for me. So much so that when these metalcore screams come in, I get genuinely excited. But even though these tracks are a little cheesy and a little corny at parts, this is still so much more adventurous from what I've been hearing from them since 1999 practically. We even have these tracks later on the album like The Wolves Are Back in Town, which have some serious teeth and grit to them. This is such a simple tune and such a straightforward tune, but with how cheesy and ridiculous some of the other tracks on here are, there's like a breath of fresh air for me. Not to mention, this track has easily Bjorn's best singing on the entire album by far. Even the riffs and the grooves are really killer. If we got more tracks like The Wolves Are Back in Town, I wouldn't be here with so much negative to say about this album, because I do sadly have a lot of negative things to say here. The fact of the matter is, with this album, there are a lot of great elements, and a lot of the tracks here have like really great key elements of awesome metal tunes, but just don't end up delivering all the way. Early on in the album, Bleeder Despoiler starts off with this riff that's not the most flashy thing that I've heard all year, but it's solid. But there's this annoying plinking that kind of sounds like a piano in the background, and it's like, what the hell is that? I can't take it seriously to save my life. The drums aren't terrible here, the riff is okay, but so many times Soilwork goes so far and brings in all these great elements, but these little details keep nagging at me, personally. Meanwhile, tracks like the Nurturing Glands take the approach of earlier tunes with that prolonged intro, and this one ends up coming off bloated and completely dated. The riff here is just so generic. I feel like this is almost taken out of like a parody of the metalcore genre and the death metal genre. Even these screams just seem so tame to me, personally. All these elements of the Nurturing Glands, like, I feel like this is all wrapped up into one single, everything that I've ever had a problem with Soilwork. And it's not like Bjorn can't sing, but his vocals and lyrics here are making me cringe just thinking about them, which we see again later on in the album on Witan. Like, overall, the sheer determination of this track is commendable. But the second that this singing starts, there's not a single thing here that I can take seriously. It's awful. Ironically, once again, the chorus ends up coming off pretty gigantic and epic, and I actually like it a lot. However, I feel like some of the metalcore influences here and just some of these other genres they're toying around with, just, it seems so fake and phoned in for me. Sadly, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it seems to me like Soilwork are trying to keep up with their contemporaries, and like they've released like 12 albums up to this point. Like, they shouldn't be in this position. There are tracks to like here, and there's some great sounds, and they're certainly showing adventure, but for me, I'm finding it very hard to completely dive into this album. Like with the Ageless Whisper, for example. Once again, they slow things down, they take their time with an intro, and it ends up sounding awesome, at least from this introduction. And honestly, this track ends up coming off as one of the most powerful here. Once again, I love how legitimately heartbreaking this track comes off. Between the strings in the background and just how sappy these guitars are, there's some genuine emotion here. It almost makes me sad in a way because I really wish I could enjoy this album more, because moments like this are so progressive and game-changing for them. But Soilwork just end up, kind of dropping the ball with the finale of this album. It doesn't end up being very exciting, at least for me. First up, we have Needles and Kin featuring Tommy Jotson, and I kind of thought that I was going to be into this. I kind of thought that prolonged intro was pretty cool again. But then this one really gets going, and that riff just sounds so recycled. And just everything about this comes off so faceless. I literally have nothing to say about this track. Like, nothing. Almost nothing. That's bad. But as a finale, Aquiver is actually pretty damn great. I think that this track has a sense of grandness and epicness that they could have really done a lot more with. It's something they showed early on. I would have loved to have heard more of this, honestly. But for me, I feel bad saying it because the guy can sing. But once again, I just can't see myself wrapping my head around Bjorn's vocals here. Like, some of these verses are super cheesy. But thankfully, some of the more melodic moments, especially during the chorus, end up making me kind of have to give this one a pass, because I do think overall it's one of the best assembled tracks here, even though I think some of the verses are a little goofy. And it ends up ending off this album on a really triumphant note. So overall, what I'm thinking about this album, I think that even though I'm not into a lot of the ideas here that Soilwork are doing, I still think that a lot of little details are just going to keep nagging at me, even though I'm done listening to this album now. I still think this is one of the more adventurous albums that they've done in a while, and when this album is good, I can really commend what they're trying for. I'm feeling a decent 6 out of 10. Let me know what you guys thought of this new album. Let me know down below what you'd like me to chat about in the future. Until next time, have a great day, guys.